It's one of society's darkest questions. How can a child, someone barely old enough to drive, vote, or even fully understand right from wrong, be capable of murder? Throughout history, we've seen adults commit unthinkable crimes. But when those same acts come from the hands of children, the horror cuts deeper. The very idea challenges everything we believe about childhood innocence. Teachers describe them as quiet or troubled. Neighbors say they never imagined such darkness. Yet in the shadows, behind closed doors, something dangerous brews. Rage, neglect, abuse, or sometimes, chillingly, pure remorselessness. In this chapter, we dive into the unsettling psychology of young killers, why their crimes shake society so deeply, and the haunting cases where children cross the line from innocence to evil. The first shock, a killer too young. When news breaks that a child has committed murder, the reaction is almost always disbelief. Reporters rush to describe how a seemingly ordinary kid could plan or execute something so brutal. Communities struggle to understand. Was it a one-time explosion of anger or something darker, cold calculation? In one infamous case, two boys, just 10 years old, lured a toddler from a shopping mall. What followed was a crime so shocking that it changed the way the world looked at children forever. The case raised an unbearable question. Should children who kill be treated as adults, or can they ever truly be rehabilitated? The debate over culpability. Experts clash on whether children who kill know the full consequences of their actions. Psychologists argue that developing brains lack impulse control and long-term foresight. But prosecutors counter with chilling evidence. Meticulous planning, confessions without remorse, and crimes that mirror the darkest adult behaviors. And when these children grow up behind bars or in freedom, the question remains, do they feel guilt? Or are they simply waiting for their chance to strike again? Why these stories haunt us? The reason these cases stick in our minds isn't just the brutality, it's the betrayal of expectation. A child is supposed to symbolize innocence, yet here we see innocence turned inside out. Parents feel a new kind of fear. If a child can kill, how do we ever know who to trust? This is where our journey begins. Over the next chapters, we'll uncover real cases of young killers who served their time, walked free, and now live among us. Some try to rebuild, others disappear, and a few, shockingly, return to violence. Imagine a killer serving just a fraction of the sentence you'd expect, then stepping back into society under a new name with a second chance at life. For many families of victims, it feels like justice was never served. For the killers themselves, it's an opportunity to rewrite their story or to continue their dark path. In this chapter, we focus on one of the most haunting cases of a child killer who earned parole, vanished into the world, and forced society to ask, can a murderer ever truly change? The case of Mary Bell, the girl who killed without remorse. In 1968, the world was stunned by the arrest of Mary Bell, an 11-year-old from Newcastle, England. Beneath her small frame and childish face was a disturbing capacity for violence. Mary strangled two young boys, Martin Brown, aged 4, and Brian Howe, aged 3. But it wasn't just the killings that horrified the nation. It was her chilling behavior afterward. She returned to the crime scenes, carved her initials into one victim's stomach, and taunted grieving families. In court, psychiatrists debated whether she understood the gravity of her crimes. The jury decided she did. Mary was convicted of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility and sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. She was only 11. Life behind bars and release. Mary Bell served 12 years before being released in 1980 at the age of 23. By then, she was given a new identity and placed under strict protection. Unlike adult killers, child offenders in the UK are often shielded from public scrutiny once freed, supposedly to give them a chance at rehabilitation. But critics asked, how do you rehabilitate a child who showed no remorse? Mary eventually had a daughter of her own. For years, she lived under anonymity until the press exposed her identity in the 1990s. The revelation sparked outrage. How could a woman who murdered children now be raising one? And yet, under the law, she had the same rights as any free citizen. The debate over justice. Mary Bell's case sparked endless debate. Was 12 years enough for two innocent lives? Supporters argued that she was a child, a product of neglect and abuse, and prison gave her the chance to change. Critics countered that the gruesome nature of her crimes showed something beyond immaturity. It showed evil. Even today, whenever her name surfaces, emotions flare. Some believe she's proof that child killers can reform. Others see her freedom as a slap in the face to victims' families. Life in the shadows. What became of Mary Bell after freedom? Reports suggest she lives quietly under yet another new identity, occasionally working low-profile jobs and guarding her privacy fiercely. She's even a grandmother now. But those who know her past wonder, does she still carry that darkness inside her? Or did prison, time, and motherhood change her forever? The haunting truth is that we may never know, because the law protects her identity. Her neighbors, colleagues, or even friends may have no idea that the woman next door once strangled 2 children. Why these stories matter? Cases like Mary Bell's force us to confront painful questions. Do child killers deserve rehabilitation and second chances? Or are they simply too dangerous to ever be trusted again? And for the victims' families, how can justice ever feel complete when the killer is free, living a life their loved one never had the chance to? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. On February 12, 1993, the United Kingdom witnessed one of its darkest days. 2-year-old James Bulger was abducted from a shopping center in Bootle, near Liverpool. The CCTV footage that later surfaced showed something deeply unsettling. Not a lone predator, but 2 boys, each only 10 years old, leading the toddler away. Those boys were Robert Thompson and John Venables. What followed was an act so horrific that it sent shockwaves around the globe. James Bulger was beaten, tortured, and killed by children barely old enough to understand the word murder, the abduction that stunned the world. It began as a seemingly ordinary afternoon. James's mother turned away for only a moment while shopping. That's when Thompson and Venables, already known as troublemakers, spotted their opportunity. They had skipped school and were wandering the shopping mall, looking for mischief. Instead, they found their victim. The boys calmly took James by the hand and led him out of the mall. Dozens of witnesses saw them walking with the toddler, but no one intervened. They assumed the older children were brothers or friends. The walk lasted more than 2 miles, during which James was subjected to escalating abuse. By the time it ended, the little boy was dead, left on railway tracks in a brutal attempt to cover the crime. Trial of the century. The murder trial gripped Britain. For the first time in modern history, children so young were charged with such a brutal killing. The courtroom painted a disturbing picture. Thompson was described as cold and calculating, while Venables appeared more easily influenced. Both, however, took part in the crime. In November 1993, they were convicted of murder and sentenced to be detained at Her Majesty's pleasure. A flexible sentence that meant they could be held indefinitely until deemed safe for release. The public was outraged, not just at the crime, but at the possibility that one day these boys could walk free. Release and reinvention. In 2001, after serving just 8 years, both killers were released at the age of 18. They were given new identities and lifelong anonymity orders to protect them from public revenge. For many, this was unthinkable. How could child murderers be allowed to blend back into society? Robert Thompson has reportedly kept a low profile, staying out of trouble and disappearing from headlines. John Venables, however, became the center of renewed fury. John Venables' troubled life after prison. While Thompson vanished into the shadows, Venables re-emerged in the worst way. He was arrested multiple times for child pornography offenses, shattering the belief that he could be rehabilitated. Each time, his secret identity was exposed to officials, but kept hidden from the public. The revelation reignited anger worldwide. If a killer shows disturbing tendencies even after prison, should they ever have been released at all? The legacy of James Bulger's murder. The case remains one of the most infamous in British history. It raised questions about justice, morality, and the rehabilitation of young offenders. It also left an enduring scar on the Bulger family, who continue to campaign for justice and transparency around Venables' behavior. For many, The image of James Bulger holding the hand of his killers is a haunting reminder that innocence can be stolen in the most unimaginable ways. Not every young killer hides behind silence. Some confess, eagerly, even proudly, detailing every step of their crimes in ways that leave investigators and the public horrified. These confessions force us to ask, are these teenagers seeking redemption, or are they reliving the thrill of murder? In this chapter, we examine cases where teenage killers spoke freely, revealing the twisted psychology behind their violence, and how their words still echo long after their prison doors closed. The Parker Hume murder, teenage betrayal in New Zealand. Though not American, this case is too infamous to ignore. In 1954, teenagers Pauline Parker and Juliet Hume plotted the murder of Parker's mother in Christchurch, New Zealand. The motive? They feared being separated after Juliet's parents planned to move away. The crime was brutal. They lured Parker's mother on a walk, then bludgeoned her with a brick stuffed inside a stocking. But what shocked the world most wasn't just the murder, it was the confession. Both girls, calm and unapologetic, admitted their plan in detail. Their diaries, later uncovered, revealed fantasies of creating their own world free from adults. They spoke with chilling detachment, showing how teenage obsession had twisted into cold-blooded murder. Years later, both were released, changed their names, and started new lives. One became a successful writer. Their freedom continues to spark debate about justice and forgiveness. Brendan Dassey, a controversial confession. In the U.S., confessions by teenagers often raise questions about coercion. One of the most debated cases is Brendan Dassey, a Wisconsin teen who, at 16, confessed to helping his uncle, Stephen Avery, in the murder of Teresa Halbach. But his confession, recorded on video, appeared confused and contradictory. Many argue police manipulated him, feeding details and pressuring him until he said what they wanted to hear. Dassey later recanted, but the damage was done. His words helped convict him. This case shows another side of teen confessions. Not always reliable, often clouded by fear, immaturity, or misunderstanding. And yet, those words carry life-altering consequences. Josh Phillips, a child killer's hidden crime. In 1998, 14-year-old Josh Phillips killed his 8-year-old neighbor, Maddie Clifton, after she came to his house to play. In a panic, he struck her with a baseball bat, then stabbed her before hiding her body under his bed, where it remained for days. What made this case unforgettable was his eventual confession. When police discovered the body, Phillips admitted everything, describing his actions with an unsettling calm. To this day, debates continue. Was it a panicked accident that escalated, or was there something more sinister in his nature? Phillips was sentenced to life without parole, though recent legal changes have reopened discussions about juvenile sentencing. His case highlights the thin line between childhood mistake and calculated murder. Why teen confessions terrify us. When adults confess, we expect calculation, manipulation, or guilt. But when teenagers describe their crimes, often in flat tones or even with pride, it feels alien, like a glimpse into a mind we can't comprehend. Are they too young to understand what they've done, or do they understand it all too well? These confessions strip away society's comfort blanket. They remind us that age does not guarantee innocence, and sometimes, it is the young who speak the darkest truths. When a child kills, justice feels impossible to define. Do we punish them as adults, locking them away for life? Or do we treat them as children capable of growth, rehabilitation, and even forgiveness? In this final chapter, we examine the haunting outcomes of young killers released back into society. Some disappeared into quiet lives, never committing another crime. Others returned to darkness, proving that freedom doesn't always mean redemption. And in every case, the same question lingers. Should child killers ever truly be free? The argument for rehabilitation. Psychologists argue that young brains are still developing. The prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for judgment and impulse control, doesn't fully mature until the mid-20s. This means children and teens may act recklessly without grasping the full consequences. Supporters of second chances believe prison should be about rehabilitation, not lifelong punishment. They point to success stories, child offenders who grew into law-abiding adults, breaking free from cycles of abuse, trauma, and violence. To them, keeping someone locked up for a mistake made at 12, 13, or 14 denies the possibility of change. The argument for justice. But for victims' families, the word mistake feels like an insult. To them, murder is not a childish error. It's the ultimate betrayal. When killers like Mary Bell or John Venables walk free, it feels like their loved one's life was measured as worth less than the chance at redemption for a murderer. And in cases where freed killers reoffend, as Venables did with child pornography, the fear that society let a predator loose becomes reality. Critics argue that once someone has shown the capacity for extreme violence, freedom is too dangerous a gamble. Society's uneasy balance. Across the world, laws struggle to find balance. In the U.S., Supreme Court rulings have banned automatic life sentences without parole for juveniles, recognizing their potential for change. In the UK, strict anonymity protections shield former child killers from public exposure, but that protection is often controversial. Every nation wrestles with the same dilemma: justice for victims versus mercy for offenders. There is no single answer, only case-by-case debates that tear communities apart. Where are they now? Some killers, like Mary Bell, fade into anonymity and attempt normal lives. Others, like the killers of James Bulger, remain under constant scrutiny. Their identities changed, but their pasts never truly erased. Still others, like Josh Phillips, remain behind bars, their futures decided by parole boards and shifting laws. What unites them all is society's unease. We want to believe in second chances, but when the crime is murder, forgiveness is harder than punishment. The haunting truth. Perhaps the most chilling part of these stories isn't the crimes themselves, but the unanswered questions they leave behind. When we pass a stranger on the street, sit beside someone on a bus, or chat with a coworker, how can we ever be sure who they once were? Could they be a reformed child killer living in secrecy trying to build a new life? And if they are, do we believe they've truly changed, or do we keep looking over our shoulder? Backhand index pointing right, final hook, to retain viewers and push subscriptions. The cases of Mary Bell, James Bulger's killers, and countless others force us to ask, can children who kill ever be forgiven? Or should their pasts forever define their future? The answers may never be clear, but one thing is certain. These stories will continue to haunt us, reminding us that sometimes the darkest truths come from the youngest hands. If you found this deep dive chilling, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more twisted true crime stories that uncover the cases most people dare not talk about.